and the lifespan is a lot shorter. It's 100 years maximum, according to the Vedas, and in the first yuga, the Satya Yuga, the lifespan is 100,000 years. In the second yuga, Treta Yuga, the lifespan is 10,000 years, and in the Dwapara Yuga, the one before this one, the lifespan is 1,000 years, and in this age, as I said before, it's limited to 100 years. That's the maximum lifespan. And the first yuga lasts 18,000 years. The second yuga lasts 18,000, yeah, 1,800, 1,800 years, 1,800 years. And the 1,800,000. And this age that we're in now lasts for 400,000 years. The Dwapara Yuga, which is before this, lasts for 800,000 years, and the Yuga before that lasts for 1,200,000 years. So and these cycles recur over and over again. Instead of something coming in all time coming to an end, the cycles recur. And this recurrence is something that most people in India, at least, they accept the recurrence of these ages in time, that they go in cycles, like the seasons of winter and spring and summer. You just kind of keep going, they don't stop. So at the end of this age, of which 5,000 years has passed, the Satya Yuga again begins, the long age begins, 800,000. So those are the cycles of time, and hopefully we're going to live a long time, but it all must come to an end. According to the principles of reincarnation, there's rebirth as soon as there's death, and then it continues on and on and on and on. So the concept of beauty is I'm going to talk about this, and the conclusion of beauty is that it's both a relative thing and an absolute thing. It's relative in the sense that there's different gradations, like some things are very repugnant or repulsive to us, like most people don't like spiders or snakes, or or people with what are called ugly or twisted features. Sometimes the words like hideous are used. If you don't know what hideous means in the English language, it's like repulsive or repugnant or horrifying or horrific or horrendous. It's just a bad thing. And in another sense, beauty is something that is absolute. According to Vedic philosophy, Krishna is the most beautiful object, all attractive. Has the appearance of his complexion is bluish. You've seen Krishna in the temple. Of course, the deity is not blue, but that's the description. It's the color of a rain cloud, fresh rain cloud, and a youngish a person who is maybe 13 or 14 years old, very in the original form. That's Krishna. That's a very attractive and very beautiful form, and but not everyone sees that. People see the deity in the temple as a deity or a doll or a statue or something made out of wood or marble. It was carved. Of course, it was carved, but according to Vedic philosophy, Krishna actually manifests within that form. People have these forms in their homes also. It's not just in temples, but people have these forms, little sizes of Krishna and Radha in their homes. Not only fulfills a psychological need, but it's a very attractive form. But one has to be spiritually sort of aware to see the beauty of this. When I was in London in about 1969 or 1970, sometimes some BBC reporters came to the temple. It was in London, and they said that the form of Krishna was very ugly and very hideous. That was I went to a place to look up this in an archive, kind of a museum in London, to find out what was actually said on camera. And one of the things this reporter said was that the deities were hideous, but that devotees of Krishna saw them as being beautiful. So there's that absoluteness of what is beauty. And there's a saying that in English that beauty is only skin deep. Once I saw a video, I don't know where it was made exactly, but it took place in Germany. It was after the Holocaust, and the Germans were burying all the people that they had murdered. This was just prior to World War II, I guess. And one of the soldiers was carrying a very attractive woman who was fully dressed, but she was dead. And he threw her into this large burial pit where they had all these dead bodies. And it was kind of a very striking image because on the one hand, it was a very beautiful person, but on the other hand, she wasn't beautiful because she was completely dead. I mean, there was no life left at all in that body. So that was kind of an awakening for me that you know, that beauty is only skin deep, and when someone is dead, there's nothing that attracts us, or nothing beautiful about a dead body, even though, you know, superficially and on the outside, there may be some beauty there. So sometimes it's relative, and sometimes it's absolute. There's studies done with small infants just after they were born to determine whether they thought Barbie dolls were beautiful or not. So people have tried to investigate this, you know, whether there's such an absolute thing as beauty. And in other countries, for example, I don't know which country it is. I think it's somewhere in New Guinea, but or one of the island nations. Ladies, if they're very fat or very corpulent, that's a sign of beauty. And then you have these people in Africa that stretch their lips out sometimes, and that's a sign of beauty. And I think someone was named Miss Universe in about 1988, and she had all these a black-skinned lady and had all these feathers sticking out. And in Papua New Guinea, sometimes even men wear these things. They wear feathers. They try to mimic the birds of that part of the world. They're some tribe of people called hoolies or something like that, and and they shake, and they try to look like these birds, and that's considered a very beautiful thing, a very beautiful sign. So when films became popular, the people who were the movie stars, they were always very attractive. The Clark Gables, the Cary Grants, the Marilyn Monroes, and all these people, because people liked to look at them. They could look at people like that for long periods of time, and they were always sought after for being in these films because they had these natural features that were very attractive and very good. Sometimes in the Krishna consciousness movement, there were people who turned out to be weirdos, like pedophiles or, you know, some kind of murderers or something like that. They started out being very good devotees, and later on they became very criminal-oriented. And at one time they were described as being very beautiful because they were kind of like radiant and shiny because they were spiritual. But in another sense, there was something about them that was not, you know, not very welcome, not very attractive. They had within their minds. So in this age, in the age of Kali, or the age of quarrel, sometimes people can be on the outside, I mean, I'm talking from an absolute point of view, can be very attractive or very beautiful, but inside they can be very evil. They can be murderers, they can be thieves, and they can do all sorts of things that are against humankind, even though they may have a very beautiful exterior. And I think it was Shakespeare or somebody like that who said, an apple can be very beautiful, but it can be rotten to the core. And I think it was something like, he described the apple, and then he said, what a beautiful outside evil hath. Something like that. I don't know the exact words, but it was the idea that you could be, or a person or anything could seemingly very, very beautiful, but actually be very evil inside. So these are some of the things. And some of the Sanskrit mantras or verses that are in Vedic literatures are very poetic. In fact, they're all very poetic. I don't know if any of you know the Sanskrit language, but there's words and terms that have a certain rhythm, and they're all written in a kind of a very poetic way. So even though it's a language that's very difficult to understand, it maybe takes a whole lifetime to understand Sanskrit grammar, the shlokas or the verses are very beautiful and very poetic. Yeah. And so the founder of the Krishna movement also wrote in a kind of a very poetic way. English probably wasn't his first language, but I think went to an English medium school in Calcutta or someplace like that. Yeah, it was in Calcutta. Scottish Churches College it was called. And in those times, people knew a little. Calcutta is in Bengal, and they were very famous for that. And he was known for writing poetry. It was his guru, his spiritual master, said that whatever he writes, it should be published because it's very poetic. And there was a time when there was something. I think it was in the mid-70s. There was something that the devotees put on. It was called the Road Show, and it was kind of like a musical drama. And so this was shown to a group of devotees, including the founder of the movement, and it was considered to be a very great thing. That it was song and dance and beauty and all kinds of acting was going on. And the very next day, several devotees started, trying to mimic this, putting on plays and playing saxophones and trumpets and trombones and things like that. And so there was a stricture given that for now, at least for the time being, that you should only play these cymbals and harmoniums and mridangams, nothing else, because people were going too extreme. Who were playing, in those days, electronic things. So these are, and then the pendulum kind of swung back the other way from a very liberal scene with a lot of acting and drama and singing and dancing and various kinds of musical instruments to a very conservative dimension where everything was very, just limited to cymbals and drums and nothing else. And then it sort of went back the other way, and it's sort of right now somewhere in the middle, because people do play guitars, and even when they go out and chant in public, they play other instruments, accordions and glockenspiels and things like that. So these are just some general thoughts. So maybe someone has something to say or have anything to ask about anything. It doesn't have to be what I said. I just I'm kind of talking off the top of my head. Yes.
If Krishna movement is acceptable for every culture, why Krishna movement follow Indian culture like clothes and food and many things?
Well, Indian culture, as so it's called, is also kind of like different than what we think of it. We just think of people from India as being dark-skinned and having certain mores or cultures or traditions. And Krishna didn't follow all of those. He followed many of them. He dressed like many people in India dress. But Krishna is very attractive and very youngish and very beautiful. So being the Supreme Lord, according to the Vedas, he doesn't have to follow all the rituals of Hinduism. He's above those rituals. I don't know if that's addressing your question.
So maybe people can offer Korean food. Anyway, I'm from Korea, so we can offer Korean food and we can wear our clothes as well.
Yeah, Krishna consciousness does not depend on what you eat or how you dress or where you live. It's universal. It's like any other religion is in its pure forms. Christianity, Islamic, Buddhism, Judaism, they're all pure in their original form. And I think most people in Korea are Christians. I don't know.
Most
Buddhists and Christians. But it doesn't really matter how you dress. I mean, of course, the way I'm dressed, not everyone dresses like this or shapes their heads, but you can be Krishna conscious no matter how you dress, no matter what food you eat. And Chinese or Korean or Japanese food also can be offered to Krishna. Of course, it has to be vegetarian according to Krishna conscious philosophy. The reason that we don't eat meat is because we don't think killing animals is proper, and that it generates bad karma. Killing is just a bad thing. Of course, we do it inadvertently all the time. We're walking, drinking water, we're cooking, and we're killing microbes and ants and small creatures, but we don't do it on purpose. So a certain amount of killing does happen, but intentional killing, especially killing of cows and pigs and chickens, is generally not done. So our offerings to Krishna are all vegetarian offerings. Anything else? Yes.
So in terms of food, what are your thoughts on the people of Australia who, in their ways, believe in eating turtles and crocodiles and this?
Yeah, so?
I mean, what are your thoughts from a Krishna conscious perspective on what that means? Because to them it's deeply spiritual and it's
Well,
they're connecting to
according to the
spirits.
Krishna conscious perspective, we're not Australians or Americans or Indians or anything, or Russians or anything like that. We're just spirit souls. That's what we really are. And a lot of people don't know what the word spiritual means. The word spiritual means different things to different people. To some people it means eating turtles and alligators, and to Krishna conscious people it means being strictly vegetarian. Sometimes something that's very subtle and very difficult to understand is described as spiritual. But that spiritual is a kind of a tricky word because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But according to Krishna consciousness, it means being a Krishna worshipper and not eating meat. Yes?
I read one sentence, or short sentence from Krishna book. They say, Krishna, people never kill animal, but they can kill serpent or what was that? This animal, poisonous.
Scorpion.
Scorpion. I need more information. I read just one sentence, and I want to know why exactly.
Well, the first point is that if we take one or two sentences from a treatise, it may be incorrect or misleading. It's necessary to look at the message of the whole thing before we take out one sentence or one phrase. But it's true that certain beings like deadly snakes, especially, or scorpions that can actually kill people. According to the laws of karma, if those entities are killed, that is okay. But it's not okay to just rampantly kill anything and everything that moves or grows. But certain things that are poisonous, they can be killed without incurring negative karma. And scorpions and snakes are among them. Certain snakes, black snakes, brown snakes. Although some people don't even like to kill deadly snakes. I don't agree with that, but it happens.
But why is the human superior like the snakes?
Why is a human superior to snakes?
Yeah.
Humans have first of all, they're superior to animals because and they're superior to others of their own species because they have greater power to think and move and to feel and to read and to hear. So they have a certain superiority. But in another sense, everything that's living is not to be killed because it's supposed to live out its natural life cycle. But humans are superior, just like at the present we're having a very deep philosophical kind of, not very deep, but a philosophical discussion. Whereas the cows and the bulls that also live here, they're not here because they don't understand it. So a human has a little bit higher type of intelligence. And it's incumbent upon the human beings, according to Vedic philosophy, to take care of the lower beings, like the animals and the dogs and the cats and the things that grow and move and the fish. We take care of them because that's part of the duty of someone who is superior. It's like a parent takes care of a child, even though the parent has a more advanced kind of psyche. He or she takes care of the children. So in one sense, all of the other living entities in the world, humans and animals and plants and fish and reptiles and insects, they're like children of God and children of our own children. They're part of the human family. So we try to be as kind to them as we can be. So I think that's about all I have to say, unless there's any other things that you want to ask me or bring up. Yes?
What about the eggs? Like, not always there is life in the eggs. Like, if, why don't you eat eggs?
You mean like sterilized eggs or eggs that are
Yeah.
that are not going to develop? Well, generally we just don't eat eggs. I mean, we can eat them, but it's thought, according to the laws of karma, it's a very negative thing to eat, because most eggs, when are going to become living things, most eggs. So in general, we just avoid it,
Just to be sure.
just in case, be on the safe side. Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about the feminine side of Krishna?
In all the temples, Krishna appears with Radha. Radha is the feminine counterpart, and sometimes Krishna becomes female, manifests a female form called Mohini Murti. And so the difference between male and female has been discussed in learned circles and devotee circles. And one of the things that came out was that in general, men have a role of being a hunter, a protector, and a provider, whereas women tend to be nurturers and carers of the children. They have there's a different mentality between men and women. But and Krishna sometimes manifests a female form. This is a very deep thing that could be talked about for many years, but I'm just going to leave it at that for today. But what devotees try to see is the soul within everyone. So devotee doesn't try to see this is man, this is woman, this is male, this is female, but tries to see the soul. That's the spiritual vision. So from the spiritual point of view, male and female don't exist, as we know, male and female. So that's about our time is up, I think.
That's the Alexa.
So before your harsh taskmaster or cruel master gives another assignment, I just want to thank you all for coming, and I'll be here next Sunday if anyone's still here at the same time, same place.
Hi.
Sorry. Harsh taskmaster.
Thank you very much.